How do you maintain the creativity and fun in your farm life? Get some ideas in this episode of Food, Flowers, and Fun with Nigerian grower and Agridemi founder Toluwani Precious Ogunbiyi. As always, our show is sponsored by Penlight for Farmers, helping overworked farm women experience more energy, time, and abundance in their farm lives. If you're the woman who does it all, farm work, housework, bookwork, homework, getting up at the break of dawn, this is the podcast for you.
How do you multiply by fractions, Mom?
Get away from the cares of the day. Free stock, root stock, feed stock, seed stock. Chat with women around the world who raise food, flowers, and fun. With your host, Kay Castrataro. That's me. Well, welcome back to Food, Flowers, and Fun with your host, Kay Castrataro. And today, our guest is Toluwani Precious Ogunbiyi. And I'm sure that I did it okay? I did it okay?
Yeah.
She is joining us from Nigeria, which is so much fun for me because I've never been to Africa and have always wanted to get over there and just check out all of the cool scenery and also the different ways of living. So why don't we jump right in, because this is what I tend to do. I don't waste a lot of time with introductions, other than to say that Precious is the founder of Agridemi, which is a platform to help people learn how to grow food. And so tell us how you got into agriculture, because this was not something that you were raised in, correct?
Correct. So thank you very much, Christine, for having me.
Yeah.
I'm so delighted to be here. So I loved telling the story about how I got into agriculture because it's quite a funny one. Let me start from the fact that I started off wanting to be a medical doctor, not because I did not have a passion for agriculture, but because it did not sound like something popular to do. I once told my classmates that I wanted to be a farmer, and they all burst out laughing at me. And since that day, I changed, my purpose, so to say. I started telling everybody I wanted to become a medical doctor. I did everything to, try to make sure I became a medical doctor, but it did not work. And I found myself in agriculture again. And the way the Nigerian university or schooling system works is that sometimes you could apply for a particular course. I applied for medicine in my case. Well, I did not get medicine. Now, guess where they threw me to? They threw me to agriculture. And I was like, oh my God, I'm here again. So I could not
have a choice. God was just calling you into agriculture. And I will tell you, you are not the only medical person who has turned into farming. I was speaking with somebody not too long ago who was looking at being a midwife, which is definitely, doctor. And she also, now she calls herself a midwife to chickens. So, here you are. So you were going to be a medical doctor, and now you're still supporting people's health, just in a different way. So
exactly.
So even the Nigerian school system felt that you needed to be in agriculture.
Exactly. And one thing I love to say is that all things at the end of the day work together for our good, right? So at the end of the day, it brought me to where I needed to be. Maybe not where I wanted to be, but where I needed to be. So it was all divine, alignment, so to say. And I really love that I'm here right now. I mean, who would have imagined that I would be speaking to so many people about agriculture one day? I've had so many talks talking about agriculture, and every single time I just look at myself and I'm like, I never thought I'll be here. I never ever thought I'll be here, but here I am. So yeah.
I love it. So tell us a little bit about the way that agriculture works in Nigeria. And I'm sure that there is not just one type of agriculture in Nigeria, just as there isn't one type of agriculture anywhere. But you have some interesting challenges in Nigeria that other people don't. Like logistics are a big issue, correct?
Yeah, correct.
So talk to me about that.
So when agriculture started in Nigeria. I mean, I wouldn't say when agriculture started because Nigeria was built on agriculture. We started, with families growing their food, planting things like cassava and just the basic food stuff they needed to thrive. But, as the oil system was found in Nigeria and we found oil, we started to depend more on oil and the money from oil, and we sort of left agriculture and it became like the thing for poor people to do, right? Now, that was the subsistence part of farming that we started with. Now, as agriculture progressed, we now see that although agriculture is not being done in the subsistence level, now more big farms, industrial farms are coming up, taking charge of the agricultural space. And now it seems like agriculture is a volume business. So if you're not a big industry in the agricultural business, you might not really thrive, or you might just make enough money just to sustain you and maybe your family, but not to build wealth, right? So a lot of people do not really see it as an opportunity in that sense. Now, in the big industry of agriculture in Nigeria, there are a lot of challenges. It might not be so prevalent in the subsistence levels because, they are just feeding themselves, their families, and maybe their neighbors. But in the industrial parts and in the industrial level, we see that there are so many challenges. And I know this because I've personally worked with farmers, high level farmers who farm on large scale. And one of the issues, like you rightly said, that I've come to notice is logistics. It's not really talked about. It's like one of those undercover issues, but that has great impact on how prosperous a farm or a farmer can be, right? Mm-hmm. And it's such a problem because Nigerian roads are bad. And a lot of our food are being transported from really far countries. Why is this? It's because some places in Nigeria can't grow certain food due to, different climates and whatnot. So in some colder areas of Nigeria, we are able to grow more food. For example, we have places like Jos where we see fresh vegetables. In fact, they are really cheap, really fresh. Now, what some farmers do is that they have their farms located in Jos. Then they try to, sell to places like Lagos, which is like one of the bustling cities in Nigeria, right? But that logistics is a problem. You wanted to say something?
No, I was just saying I totally understand how that would be, and it really does connect with a lot of what we see here too, because you tend to have more agricultural areas, and then it's very common to ship that product to other parts of the country. And if you don't have a good roadway or air transit or all the railroads, all those different ways of transporting, that's really a very limiting factor.
Yeah, very limiting. And it's especially limiting because we do not really rely on airway to transport our food. We majorly rely on the road system, right? And like I said earlier, the roads are really bad. It's one of the problems, let me just say it that way, that Nigeria has been trying to solve for the longest time. The roads can be really bad and they are really long roads, very bad, poor road network. And many times, sometimes farmers encounter accidents on this journey. I remember a personal story of a farmer I was working with at that time. He was trying to, not him personally, but his driver, his staff, was transporting some food produce from the northern part of Nigeria to the western part, and he encountered an accident on the road. Unfortunately, the driver passed and the food produce was lost. So you can imagine the level of loss and grief that would have come with that, occurrence. So there are lots of challenges, not even talking about the policy challenges. There are so many policy challenges. Some policies do not favor, farmers. And that's because, like I said in the beginning, it's a volume game. So if you are not playing big, it's like you're automatically going to lose one way or the other. So only the big players, the billionaires that are into agriculture really can say that, oh, I'm making big money in agriculture. But that shouldn't be it. We should actually, and that's one thing that would encourage more people to come into the agricultural system when they see that there is profits here. But because, this system has so discouraged people to think that there will always be a loss. It's really it's a dwindling sort of system. We are not seeing it thrive as it should. In fact, someone I've worked with it's funny how he's into the agricultural system, but he would advise anyone that wants to go into agriculture, do not do it except you're sure you know what you want to get yourself into, because it can be depressing. It can be a lot. Of course, there are good parts to it. I mean, if you do it well, you make the money, but it can be a lot.
Yeah, and I gotta say, like, I wish that were something that didn't happen everywhere, but I know that in the United States, there are a lot of people who are torn between, they love farming, and so in one sense, they want their kids to stay in the game. And
Yeah.
yet, on the other hand, they want their kids to have an easier life and to
Yeah,
make more money. And so they do encourage them not to stay in farming,
Mhm.
which I think is very reasonable. And I think it's also
Mhm.
disappointing, because I think maybe it's time that we start readjusting our understanding of agriculture and making it so that the farmers themselves can be fulfilled on
Yeah.
multiple levels. Like, it's
Yeah.
not okay for
Mhm.
us to be driving farmers out of business when they really are
Yeah.
the ones who, I always use this phrase, feeding our bodies and souls.
Mhm.
They
Mhm.
they are, they're creating beauty, and they're creating
Mhm.
food, and they're taking care of us in ways that we need to find a better way to support them. And it sounds like you're trying to do that through Agridemi. Is that right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
tell
that's right.
tell us about Agridemi and what that is all about.
Okay, so I love talking about Agridemi because I just love what we do.
Look at the big
Agridemi
smile.
is yeah, you can tell I love what I do, right? Agridemi is a platform that, by the way, I never saw it coming. I was just in my room one day, and the thoughts, just crossed my mind that agriculture is fun. It can be fun. We've made it so rigid, we've made it so structured, we've made it so deep that people can really relate to it. So I decided that, what, I'm going to start Agridemi. And what we're going to do in Agridemi is that we're going to make agriculture fun. We're going to make it relatable. We're going to make it powerful. We're going to teach people how to grow their own food with the resources they have, with the space they have, and show them that it is actually possible, that you're part of the solution if you can grow your own food. When
Oh, I
we
love
grow
that.
our own food, yeah, when we grow our own food, we are, reducing our over reliance on the corporate food system, which is a big solution a lot of people overlook. So that's what Agridem does in short.
So explain how that happens, because I love that. I love that idea. And one of the things, I'm a multi-generational farm kid. So like we've had 5 generations of farmers, and that has been like basically our whole living is farming. And so what I've seen is that there is kind of a stigma against farmers who are either part-time farmers or, like you were saying, subsistence farmers. In the States, we call them homesteaders, but people who are growing their own food and might have a little bit to sell at at the end of the road to their neighbors or something like that, but nothing really huge. And I love what you're talking about with Agrodemi, because I feel like it's really time that we start changing that narrative,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
I think it doesn't do service to what agriculture really is and who farmers really are. Like I think farmers are more than just, the big industrial farmers. Like there is a place for the small family farm, and it might look different than what we expect. So talk to me about how that works in Agrodemi. Like how are you creating these small farmers? Like I'm going to call them small farmers, startup farmers.
Yeah, I actually love what you said because it's very valid in the sense that I have a very personal story that even just came up. I didn't think about it in that way, but when you mentioned that, I just, actually was able to put together that this is what happened. So I was trying to form a corporation with an agricultural company. They're an agri-tech company. Actually, they reached out to me to form a sort of partnership or corporation. But by the time I started telling them about, more details about what Agridemi does and the fact that I grew small farmers, I help educate small farmers, I myself, I do a little bit of gardening, I grow food for myself, for my family. They ruled me out as, oh, you don't really have the connection we're looking for. You don't really have, so they're looking for the big farmers. They literally said it that since I do not have, that type of, capacity as, an industrial farmer, I might not be able to help them. But I knew I was well able in my capacity to help them establish their farm, because that was the goal, help them establish their ag tech business here in Nigeria. But they ruled me out. And I feel like it's a very, very valid complaint that just because you're a homesteader, just because you're a gardener, just because, and funny thing is that that is the solution. We think until you grow in millions or in billions of tons of food, then you're, solving a problem. But what we are doing in Agridemi is that we're empowering people in different parts of the world, not just Nigeria, not just Africa, different parts of the world, to be able to see that it is very relatable to grow your own food. You do not have to depend on the big industrial farms. And how we are doing it, which is the question you asked, how we're doing it is that we're mixing creativity with agriculture. So rather than, and I'll tell you how Agridemi came to be. I was in class one day, my teacher was teaching me, I studied agriculture, like I mentioned. So my teacher was teaching us something about, the farm. I can't remember the particular topic, but I remember I went back home that day, and as I was preparing for my exam, I decided to watch a YouTube video. As I was watching the YouTube video, it was so boring, it was so lifeless. Something clicked in me that, wait, it doesn't have to be this way. So I took up my notes and I started to, jot. I started to connect the lines, because that's how I read. I try to form an image in my mind and connect it, make everything like a unified concept. And I was like, this is really interesting. Why don't I make sure the world that agriculture can be interesting? And from there on, I started, finding content, developing content that will show what word will I use? How interesting agriculture is. That it's not just pen and paper, which is very weird, because agriculture is one of the most practical things you could do. Farming, right? You are touching the soil, but we've made it so bland, so uninteresting. And that was how agriculture came to be, by mixing creativity with farming.
I love that. I love that. So you talk about it as a platform. So is it mostly an online, or if you're doing a lot of hands-on work with farmers as well? Because you were talking about some farmers that you've worked with more closely. So I'm curious as to how people are getting the information, how you're helping to make it interesting to people who maybe didn't consider agriculture to be a job before.
Okay, so thank you for that question. Agridemi is currently online. Like, we're currently maximizing our online channels, but we sometimes go into schools. This is not something we've recorded. The last time we went into a school system to try to teach students, we realized that there is a potential here. So we plan on making that large scale really soon, which is something I'm excited for, right? We do not work very one on hand or very closely with farmers yet. It's definitely in the works. But by the way, Agridemi started last year, and to see the progress we've made so far is so I'm mind blown by it. And I just love that there's potential, because when I started this, I was like, agriculture, who would buy into this idea? I mean, why would anyone be interested in agriculture? Now tell me why I started posting. I mean, we started posting on social media only to see that a lot of people were actually interested. And you see people will post on our social media pages, and you'll see people, comments like, oh my God, this is really insightful. Wow, I learned something, so I could do this. So, this is that easy, it's that straightforward. I mean, all I need is a seed. And now that you've given me the instructions, I know exactly what to do. I have soil in my backyard. So why am I wasting my time? Right. So basically that's what we've been doing. And I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you were saying that Agridemi just started, so it's kind of a startup business.
It started around last year, 2024.
Okay. All right. And you also work a 9-to-5 job, correct?
Yeah, I actually work 2 9 to 5 now.
Two 9-to-5s?
Yes, two
Okay,
different jobs, although
tell me
they are
how you
both
do.
remote.
No, see, this is where we get to my point with farmers and farm support, where I'm always like, how is it that you manage to balance all of these things? Not me. I couldn't work two 9 to 5s and a startup. I'm good just doing one startup. That's enough for me. But but tell me what your 9 to 5s are, if you don't mind, and then
Okay.
tell me how you take care of yourself so that you don't burn out, because you are young and beautiful and energetic, and we want to keep your youth and beauty and energy in this circle and not use you up. So what do you talk to us about this?
Okay, so this is going to be me being very open because I mean, I wish I didn't have to do 2 9 to 5. I wish Agridemi was enough to, just enough to sponsor my life in that way. But I work currently in the tech industry, not really tech because I'm not really into tech, but I work as a social media manager. And, that even helped me, my knowledge of tech helped me fuse, my um, love for agriculture and tech into ag tech, right? And at a point in my life, I was all about ag tech, but now I'm more focused on agridemy, which is not necessarily, ag tech related. But I would actually say we're ag tech related because we're utilizing social media channels, which
Yeah.
is the technology aspect, right?
Yep.
And how do I balance that? I really don't know. If I say I know, I'll just be probably telling you something false because what I do is I just try to go with the flow.
Uh-huh.
And on some days it's harder than the other. There are so many times I've tried to build a rigid structure to follow because of course structure helps, but we do not realize that life would always life. You can't always control what happens. So some days the workload is hectic and I really do not have time for, to introspect as I would like. I really do not have time to reach out to my friends or my family. On some days it's like that. But on some other days, after maybe I've gone into that flow and I'm, steady on that wave, I just, do my work quickly. I'm able to get things out on time. I'm able to be as productive as possible. And those days are better. But it doesn't always remain that way. So there are always the highs, there are always the lows. It's just trying to flow with it. And recently I watched a TEDx conversation about how we tend to see stress as the enemy. How, we are like, oh my God, I'm so stressed. And sometimes stress is actually just helping us become better, helping us build our capacity, right?
Yeah.
I know that this is still the least I'll ever do, right? I would keep on building capacity to do more. Probably I would end up having a big industrial farm one day and I would have to manage it even with agridemy because yes, agridemy is important. Teaching people to grow their own food is important as well as the industrial part, right? I might also be running a multinational one day. Who knows? So I see everything right now as a learning period for me, learning to build experience. And I've realized that there's no one way around it. There's really no one way. I just flow, really. I just flow. I learn from the bad days. I introspect on the good days and try to find out how I can replicate those good days. And yeah, that's basically it's not easy to be honest. It's one of the hardest things, especially because there are lots of expectations on me as a person, as a friend, as a sister, as a daughter. And a lot of people do not really understand the fact that as much as I might want to be as there for them as much as I could, I might not be able to because of the responsibilities on me. Of course, I try to meet up. In fact, I recently started this thing where I try to catch up with a friend every month. At least we go out, we just hang out and talk. If that's little I can do, I would do it at least to keep myself in check. But it's just going with flow, really.
Yeah, well, oh wow, there's so much that I heard in that, and that the competing expectations upon you
Mhm.
is one thing that I think all of us, especially I think women, but women in farming.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Some of the things I was hearing from you, yeah, that the balancing other people's desires on us and our desire to serve other people. I think it's interesting because we have these two sides of relationships where we have people who are putting expectations upon us, and then we have our own set of expectations about what it
Yeah.
means. So,
Yeah.
your mother has expectations, your father has
Mhm.
expectations, your sister or brother have expectations, your employers have expectations,
Mhm.
your agrodemi clients have expectations, and then you have expectations about who
Mhm.
you want to be
Yeah.
towards all of these people.
Yeah.
And I have found in my own life that being able to really set up boundaries, and that word is
Mm.
used so often, and
Mhm.
and not necessarily understood, but to be able to understand where our limits are. What are the things that are feeding us?
Mhm.
And because we need to do that, like we
Yeah.
need to take care of ourselves or we will have nothing left for anybody
Mhm.
else.
Yeah.
And how much of that how much of what we have do we expend on others and
Mhm.
business, and even just on taking some time to ourselves, that
Yeah. Mhm.
going for a walk by yourself
Mhm.
instead of
Exactly.
but I love that you're setting dates with your friends, because that's
Mhm.
something I've really started to do, because I had some really great friends in college, and I'm terrible at keeping in touch with people. Like, oh, terrible. People are so good at using social media and like reading what's going on. I'm like, I go on social media, I post stuff that I post for my business, for my clients, and then I'm off of there. Like it's like a black hole that I like stay away from as much as I can. And so I have to be really intentional about making time for the people that I really care about. Otherwise, they get kind of pushed to the back.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm hearing a lot of that. So are there some things that you think you can do to maybe help you align your activities more to what you need, or is that something you really struggle to do? Or do you feel like you're doing it pretty well right now?
Well, I won't call it a struggle per se. Well, it can be a struggle, but not all the time. Especially because I realize that this, okay, so we'll term something a struggle, but we do not realize that it's a process. So I
Mm,
see it as a process, not as a struggle. So the end
oh,
goal is that I learn to be more um accommodating of all areas of my life in a good balance, that each thing needs. So I won't say it as a struggle. I really don't tend to see things as struggle. I just see them as opportunities to learn per se.
oh,
But it's hard in the moment, right? To see it as an opportunity to learn, because sometimes you're like, what is even going on? But I think one thing that has really helped me is journaling and introspecting a lot.
oh, really? That's so
Yeah.
interesting. That's one of my big things. I'm a journal instructor. So,
Wow. Yeah. So I tend to journal, although my journaling has reduced the past few months. I don't really journal as frequently as I used to because I left the university about last year. Yeah, I left the university. So while I was in the university, I had a lot of time on my hands to journal. But now with work, it's hard. But when I can, I journal. I try to figure out, okay, where am I at in this moment of my life? Where do I need to be? How am I, setting boundaries? How am I meeting expectations? Am I fulfilled in myself? Am I achieving am I still on course, or am I just going around with the wind? Because that can happen a lot, especially when your son who is young and you're trying to build wealth in that sense. You tend to jump on every and anything that seems to make you good money, right? So it's like you sort of lose your own vision and your own mission. So I
mm.
try to journal to make sure I'm still on track. Is what I'm doing helping me in the long term, or is it just something I'm doing for temporal validation or maybe temporal gain? So I'd say that's what's helping me right now.
Oh, I'm so glad you said that. Because I try to work with farmers, to learn different journaling techniques that they can do in even little small pieces, like 5 minutes a day, because it is hard. And, I'm a writer. That's, what my real job used to be. And so for me, journaling is something that's just fun. It's natural. Like it's something that I can lose hours sitting there and writing about all kinds of stuff. And so I know that a lot of farmers are not like that at all. They would much rather be out in the field than sitting down with a pen and paper or in front of the computer or whatever. And so, and yet these are really valuable tools. So I definitely try to give them like lots of little 5 minute journal prompts or things that they can do to do exactly what you're saying, to just kind of take an inventory really quickly and be like, okay, how am I feeling today? Like maybe I can't work as hard today as I thought I was going to because I've got maybe I'm choking on pollen all day and I need to I need to do something else, You just never know. And so you want to be able to have that flexibility and also to be staying on target. And so
Yeah.
I love so much of what you're saying there. I think that's just beautiful. And the fact that you're checking in with yourself all the time, because I think we sometimes believe that, we set our course once and then we just stick
Mm,
to it. And
yeah,
and
yeah,
like that's it. Like you just have to
yeah.
you have to do your plan once and then just
Mm,
follow the plan. And the fact is that that doesn't really work for most of us.
yeah,
Like you have to keep checking in because you do
yeah,
get derailed. And I love what you
yeah.
said about, chasing after the money or chasing after the thing that seems, it could be something that seems really great,
Mhm.
but if it's going to take you away from where your heart is, then it's actually a really bad thing because
Yeah.
you might make money at it, but are you going to end up where you want to be at the end? And I think and so for farmers, I think that's a really interesting thing too, to kind of like drag it back to the agriculture stuff. Where we have such a tension, I think, in farming about trying to make money. And
Mhm.
let's face it, like most people farm because they love it. I mean, why else? Why
Yeah,
else would
why
you do
else?
it? Like,
Yeah.
why else would you work so hard for so
Mhm.
little money in
Mhm.
a job? Like I say this all the time. I'm like, farmers are like the biggest dreamers in the world, and they think they're not. Like they're like,
Yeah.
I'm so practical. And I'm like, no practical person would ever get into a job
Yeah.
where they have virtually no control over the
Mhm.
weather, the markets. Like you have so little control, and yet we do it, and we say, no, we're gonna be successful in this, and we're going to keep doing this. And it's really because we love it, and we have this sense of hope and this sense
Yeah.
of positivity. And I think your mindset is actually so important for farmers, because that idea
Mhm.
of, not seeing things as, oh, I didn't use the word challenges, struggles,
Okay.
reframing that idea of struggles as opportunities to learn,
Yeah.
opportunities to grow. That really is such a powerful mindset, and it really can help change the way that we live in the world. So I think that's amazing. So tell me how you develop that mindset, because that is not a mindset that everybody has.
Okay, so I think this is not something I talk about or like live sessions a lot, but it's very important. And it's all can be traced back to my faith, my faith in God, my faith in the word. It's something I try to, beyond the religious aspect of it. The word of God can be really wholesome. It helps you develop your worldview. It helps you develop your perspective to life, to realize that life was, it's very hard to think that life was made to favor you. And with every single thing that happens, you tend to feel like, why is everything going against? But that perspective, I mean, to be honest, something happened today that almost took me off course, and I was just like, oh my god, I can't deal with this right now. But then I had to remind myself of the fact that everything would eventually work out for my my good. Everything will work out to favor me at the end of the day. So to be honest, I owe it all to God for teaching me how to be so wise in my mindset, in my perspective to life, for teaching me how to be resilient. My natural self would tend to give up a lot and tend to just, oh my God, I can't do this again. I'm getting my hands off. But, my resilience has come from a place of realizing that if I keep on trying, because I have, a bigger force behind me, I'm going to win at the end of the day. So that's basically it.
Oh, I love that. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me.
Yes.
Look at that. It's a sister. I met a sister today. I'm so excited. That's so exciting. But I mean, I agree with that as well. Like I talk a lot to people about the spiritual side of life, because people,
Mhm.
I think, I don't know, you'll have to help me if I'm making an overgeneralization here. I feel like in the West, we tend to be a little bit more closed off to spirituality
Yeah.
than in Africa and like
Yeah.
the Eastern cultures.
Yeah.
And I think that, some of it comes from the Enlightenment, where everybody learned all the
Mm,
science stuff, and we're like,
yeah.
oh, science is so cool. And it is. I love science, and I love the way that science and the Bible actually fit together. Like, I could go off on
Exactly.
that, but that's we're going off into all kinds of places today. This is so much fun. This is like the talk that I expected to have today. But I really do think that the spiritual part of us is something that God did put inside of us. And I tell
Yeah.
people, obviously I want everybody to love Jesus, because I think everybody should love Jesus. And
Everybody.
but I also understand that there are people who are not going to love Jesus,
Yeah.
yet they still are spiritual beings. And so we
Yeah.
still need to have that nurturing of our spiritual side.
Yeah.
And so let's talk about that. So you're talking about, you obviously read the Bible because you're
Yeah.
using the word as something that you really hold on to. And so people who have other religious traditions, spiritual texts are definitely a way of taking care of their spiritual side. What else do you do to feed that spiritual side of you?
Um, okay, so I like to say it this way. It's like, how do I say it without sounding too deep? Okay, it's like an apple tree, right? An apple tree was created to sort of live off the an apple was created to live off the apple tree for the first um part of its life until it grows and develops into a full matured apple. And you see that one thing that happens when the apple gets disconnected or falls off the apple tree is that it begins a process of decomposition, right? So we see that for the apple to be in its full vitality, it has to be connected to the apple tree because that is its source, right? So I'll say that being connected to my source, where divine inspiration comes from, being connected to my source, where strength comes from. And strength is very important because we are human beings that tend to faint a lot. We get tired, we get weary in so many. I mean, life was designed in such a way that if you do not have a strong backing, you keep on falling and falling, and eventually you get worn out from falling so much. You might just quit, right? But having a backing, having something to fall on, knowing that you don't have to fall flat on the floor because it's sort of like a how would I call it? Sort of like, let's say, a spring that once you fall, it helps pushes you back to stand.
Yeah.
Right. Sometimes it might take time for you to get back up because you've fallen so hard, but it always pushes you back. And I think that as if I would say that if there's any secret to my life to being able to keep up with work, with life generally, it's that being able to be connected to my source, my a source that sustains me, that sustains my life, that keeps me on my feet,
Yeah.
basically.
Oh, yeah, so good. And there's so many ways that we can stay connected to the source. I find that being outside in nature and spending
Mhm.
just like just breathing in the beauty of nature
Yeah,
is one of
exactly.
those ways where you can just see you can see the power of
Mhm.
God, and you can also see how everything manages to work. I've got these birds that live outside, and they're like calling and talking and doing all their thing,
Mhm.
and they're not worried about what the next day is going to bring. They're just doing their thing. They're going out, they're feeding their babies, they're making their nests. They're doing their thing, and they're okay. Like they're being they're being taken care of. And I love what you said about being able to fall down and then get back up, and
Yeah,
sometimes not fall down so far because you're supported.
yeah.
um I went hiking with a friend in the Adirondacks last week, and she took me on two 4,000-foot mountains, and I've never done mountains before. And I did great. Like I did great going up the first one, coming down the first one, going up the second one. Great. We started down the second one. I felt like $1,000,000. And all of a sudden I took a step and my legs literally just said, nope, no more.
No
And I
more.
landed on the ground, and I was like, huh, we are like 4.5, 5 miles up a mountain. I gotta get down the mountain. And I thought about rolling down the mountain, but I was like, there were a lot of really big rocks. I was like, yeah, I don't think that's gonna work. But she is an experienced hiker, and she had brought a set of poles. And when she brought the poles, I was like, I'm not going to need those poles. Well, thank the Lord for those poles, because I literally, like, for 2 miles, I was basically like one little step at a time, clutching
Mm,
onto these poles. And when I'm thinking about what you were talking about being resilient and keeping from falling, or falling and then getting up, like there was a time when I did fall and I couldn't get up without Casey's help. And so she helped me up. And then I was like leaning on these poles, and I needed those poles to have the strength
mhm,
until my legs came back enough to
mhm,
be able to carry my own weight. And
mhm.
like, isn't that what being connected to our source is all about?
Yeah,
That
exactly.
spirituality, that having that support, so
Yeah.
that when we give in, which we are going to, like, we're human, we overdo, we get exhausted, we get buffeted, and we
Mhm.
all have times where we just need more than we can give ourselves. And
Yeah.
sometimes we have a friend who comes along, sometimes it's a set of poles that you didn't think you need,
Mhm.
didn't want to need. Like, I didn't want to have to use poles on the way down that silly mountain. But how thankful I was to have them, because otherwise I'd have like been crawling out of my hands and knees, and how
Mhm.
how horrible would that be? So yeah, so I love that. I absolutely love what you're saying about that. And I hope that the people listening are thinking of ways that they can connect with their spiritual side. And for some people it tends to be more art, or music, or combinations of those. I mean, I know putting on happy music is one of the quickest ways to change my attitude. Like, happiest thing. Like,
Yeah, me too, actually. I love music. I love listening to music. It just helps me calm my brain, literally.
yes. Yes, absolutely. So, I'm looking back at all of the stuff that we've talked about here, and we've got about 10 minutes left. I guess I'm wondering if you could share a little bit about where you see Agridemi moving, and how you see your work supporting the creation of more farmers, and also maybe the creativity, because I think that creativity with helping farmers think outside the box is really important. Can you speak to that a little, do you think?
Sure. Sure. So I always say this, that our future is in our young generation right now. Our future is in the children, right? And I'm not trying to sound, all motivational, but it's true. It's true. And that's one reason why in Agridemi we tend to target the young children. Because if we start building that mindset from a young age, then there'll be more success rates in the future. So how do we plan on doing this? Going to schools, ingraining in them the fact that this is a possibility. Funny how I was the only one in my class at that point in time who saw being a farmer as a possibility. And when I mentioned it, my classmates laughed about it, right? So we see that there is a problem. Now, children are, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with tech. I'm into tech too, but children are growing up thinking tech is the only way to make money, or tech is the only way to be impactful in life. And we have to show them otherwise. One system that I'm trying to replicate is the system that we've used in pushing the SDGs. I'm also into the SDG. I'm an SDG advocate because I advocate for sustainable food systems. That's SDG 2, zero hunger, right? And I love
And for those who aren't familiar, because probably shamefully, a lot of our American listeners probably are not conversant with the Sustainable Development Goals. So those are the SDGs, and they've been many countries around the world have agreed that they want to help support the Sustainable Development Goals for the world, not just for their country or their area. So one of those sustainability goals is SDGs is zero hunger. And so talk about that, because I think this is a really important place where obviously farming matters. Like if you don't have farms, you don't have food, you have hunger.
Thank you for clarifying that, because sometimes I tend to forget that not everybody knows about the SDGs.
No, it's okay.
I'm so ingrained in the system that I'm like, who doesn't know about the SDGs? But to be honest, some people do not know about the SDGs. So thank you for clarifying that.
Oh yeah, no problem.
Pushing SDG 2, zero hunger, because that is the goal at the end of the day. But one thing I've realized over my time as an advocate for the SDGs is that all these goals are all intertwined. With the fulfillment of one goal comes the fulfillment of another goal. So we need to see it as a goal, not as goals. Although they are goals, to help us track our progress, right? But at the end of the day, it's a goal, right? And as I was saying before, the way we've pushed the SDGs is quite impressive to me. I mean, the fact that many people see the SDGs as an important factor to helping us develop our world. I want Agridemi to be that bridge, to be able to, show people the importance of agriculture. And I'm not talking about the agriculture as we know it, but the gardening, the farming, growing fresh food, raising livestock, that is not chemically infused, right? That is good for our systems, good for our body, right? And I love how we've pushed that with the SDGs. And I also want Agridem to be able to push that, the fact that we can grow our own food, and that is part of the solution. Such that in secondary schools, children know about agriculture. They know the basics of growing food. They know the basics of growing tomato. They know the basics of growing cabbage. They know how to cater for the soil, how to steward the earth. Because like I love to say, we are not just here to, live. We are here to steward the earth, because it has been given to us as our body, as our home rather. So the same way we would take care of our bodies, the same way we should take care of the earth. So it's very important. And I feel like that bridge has been missing, that gap. It's a wide gap. And not enough people really focus on that, right? So as much as we are not yet there, I really am hopeful that one day, and it's a big passion in my heart, that one day we will get to the point where people see the importance of sustainable agriculture. I'll put it in that bracket, sustainable agriculture, and how it is important not just for our now, but for our future.
Yeah. And that word sustainable, because it gets used in so many different ways. The way it's defined in circles that I've been in is that there are like three pillars to that sustainable agriculture. There's taking care of the land, there's taking care of society, and there's taking care of the financial needs of the farmer. And so, like, as you were saying with the Sustainable Development Goals, those are all connected. Like you can't just worry about feeding people, if you're not taking care of the land and the water and the air, you're not going to have a good resource to
Yeah.
create good food. If you don't have financial stability, then people aren't going to be able to grow things. And
Yeah.
so, it's that whole interconnectedness. And I really love how you tied that together. That's just it's beautiful, and I think it's really inspiring because the farmers that are currently farming have such power in so many ways. Like, they really are so important to our entire system.
Yeah.
And I think it's good for them to hear that, because I think sometimes it's easy to forget it when the money is not coming in and the tariffs are being raised and everything else is falling to pieces, to remember that the work that they're doing really is important.
Yeah.
Um,
It's impactful.
oh, so I could talk to you for hours, but as we're coming to the end, I always ask my guests if they have like one word that they would give to farmers. Like, if there were one thing that they felt every farmer should know, what would that be? So what would you tell farmers if you had the opportunity to give them that one piece of key advice?
I think it's actually related to the last statement or the last sentence you made before now, and that is the fact that you matter. And I know that we say it a lot that, oh, you matter, but I really do mean it when I say you matter. The work you're doing, especially if you're a farmer that is not just focused about gaining, so you don't just use chemicals and synthetic fertilizers to grow your food just because you want the money, but you're intentional about building and growing healthy food that people can eat and have a better well-being. You actually matter. What you're doing matters. And if you're someone like me, who, what you're doing is advocating, what you're doing is creating knowledge, what you're doing is finding creative ways to push out agriculture, you matter. And it will count in the future. You might not be able to see it in the little bits and pieces here and there, but it counts and you matter.
Oh, Precious, thank you so much. Like, those are such beautiful words. And I just want to thank you.
Sorry, I just want to say that also, if you're someone like Christine, who is putting together this awesome podcast, you matter because you're doing an amazing job. I mean, we don't know the impact. We might be seeing it in time, like, oh, in this time right now, probably a number of people listen to it, but it's usually like a domino effect. And I just want to thank you for doing this, because you do matter and you're making an impact. Yeah.
Thank you very much. That's very unexpected and very sweet of you. So I hope that in another year or so, when Agrodemi has had more time to grow, we could have you back and see how things are going, and talk about current. Hopefully, current events will be a little bit less traumatic than they are right now. Because things are so fun right now. But I want to thank you so much for joining us, and I will see all of you out there next time on Food, Flowers, and Fun. Have a great day.
Bye.
How do you multiply by fractions, Mom?
Farmworks calling, our show is all done. Goodbye, farewell, so long, adieu. See you next week, same time, same place for Food, Flowers, and Fun. Go in peace. Visit us at www.penlightfarmers.com.